Madam President, thank you for that. For folks watching at home, we just passed a significant disaster tax bill, which is critical to helping disaster survivors across the country. And it includes bipartisan legislation that I introduced along with Senator Wyden and Senator Cassidy. Our Protect Innocent Victims of Taxation After Fire Act would make sure that individuals, families, and entire communities who have suffered from utility-caused wildfires can receive the full compensation to rebuild their lives without fear that their settlement payments will be subject to taxes. In my home state of California, over 70,000 people have been impacted by the destruction of the Butte Fire, the North Bay Fire, and the Camp Fire in recent years. Now, if you can imagine when you are wading through the ashes of your former home and thinking about how you can possibly begin to rebuild, the last thing you should have to worry about is that the government is going to tax the payment from your legal settlement that already fails to cover the full cost of your losses in the first place. Disaster settlement funds aren't income. It's not an asset. It's compensation for what a family has lost. It's meant to be an opportunity to begin to rebuild your life. An opportunity that should not be diminished because our tax code is outdated. And it's not just for my constituents, Madam President. My constituents looking to rebuild. Utility-caused fires are becoming increasingly common across the western United States. But this bill that we just passed would make sure that all recent and future wildfire victims throughout the country have access to their full settlements. That includes those in Oregon and Hawaii who have either reached settlements or are still working through the process with the utilities that caused devastating wildfires. This measure is a common-sense, bipartisan solution to protect Americans at the most difficult time in their lives. And so I want to take a moment to thank Senator Cassidy and Senator Wyden for their partnership, as well as to my California colleagues in the House, Representatives Mike Thompson and Doug LaMalfa, for their leadership on the issue in that chamber. And I look forward to seeing the President sign this bill into law as soon as possible. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.
Madam President,
The senator from Oregon.
while he's on the floor, let me thank Senator Padilla for our partnership these many months, and also to Senator Cassidy. And we Westerners have really strong views about this because the fires of the West today are not your grandfather's fires. They're bigger, they're hotter, they're more powerful, they are leaping over rivers, and the families that my colleague and I are talking about, they feel like they've been hit by a wrecking ball. And after getting clobbered, they're saying to themselves, why can't I get a fair shake from the government? Why are they hitting me again, even though I don't have any income? As my colleague has said so well, these are people who have truly been visited by a disaster. Their homes and their businesses are burned, their possessions and livelihoods, gone. And finally, the federal government is showing some common sense. That's what my friend from California has spelled out. Our effort is going to lift a big tax burden that has hit these victims of wildfires and other natural disasters at exactly the worst time. We are getting rid of a totally unfair tax on legal fees associated with settlements after disasters. And by the way, we've been working in a bipartisan fashion, and we've had to do that because we're fixing something that went haywire in the 2017 tax bill. Now, we have been pushing our colleagues in a bipartisan way for months to do a bill that addresses this and other issues. I see in the chair another very valuable member of the Finance Committee, our friend from New Hampshire, Senator Hassan, and she and I and others had a bill that got 357 votes in the House of Representatives that included this important legislation that Senator Padilla and Senator Cassidy and I have worked on. I'd say to my colleagues, and I brought this up, I say to my friend in California, we had our 1100th town hall meeting where the victims came and said, Ron, is it ever going to get done? And I said, you bet it's going to get done. It's going to get done in the lame duck session. And they said, why hasn't it happened earlier? And the reality is, it should have happened earlier, because when you get 357 votes in the House of Representatives, which included our bill, you don't get 357 votes very often over there in the House of Representatives. It doesn't happen by osmosis. It's because my colleagues here work in a bipartisan way and wanted to get this done. So we wanted, frankly, to do more. We wanted to do it earlier. But I say to my colleagues that we're going to keep going on the things from that package that got 357 votes in the House, like the research and development credit, which our friend from New Hampshire has championed, ending double taxation between the U.S. and in Taiwan. But tonight is an evening when Senator Padilla and I have said, finally, after all this waiting, we're going to see these people who've been clobbered by these huge infernos, because that's the only way to describe our fires, I think, Senator Padilla. These are infernos. It gets hot and dry on the forest floor. Somebody drops a match. Maybe there's a lightning strike. Kaboom! And those people are finally tonight, through the work that's been done by my friend from California, our friend from Louisiana, and a lot of senators, Senator Schatz, another example, we're going to be able to tell folks in the West, it's only 5 o'clock or so in California and Oregon, I'd say to my friend, but we're going to be able to say to Westerners who've been hit by these big fires, they're going to be able to go to bed tonight in the Western United States with a little relief that the federal government has finally come to its senses and made sure that they're not going to have this additional tax burden. So I want to thank my friend from California for his good work. He's been a terrific partner. I think it is very fitting that the senator from New Hampshire is in the chair, because she, more than anybody that I know of on our committee, was really putting in the sweat equity for a bipartisan bill. This is a good night for the people that we represent in the West. It's a good night for a lot of other people in this country. I want to thank my colleague and the person who's led us on so many of these issues from New Hampshire, Senator Hassan, because we're finally getting justice and a fair shake for people who did nothing wrong but have been visited by these fires and these disasters. And the federal government is showing some common sense, which most of them, I think, would agree should have been shown quite some time ago. I thank my friend, and I yield the floor.